Hey guys, it's Mr. Sarley. Welcome to your YouTube math homework review. So this is the second week where I'm just starting off with the tutorial problem where I go over maybe the first problem on each page, and then it's sort of up to you to use that and your own knowledge to figure out the rest of them. One of the topics that we need to know in 7th grade that you learned in 6th is statistics, and that involves looking at data, like a set of numbers, and figuring out like what are the average amounts. And mean, median, and mode are different ways to find the average. And then the range is a way to figure out how spread out the numbers are. So let's review how to find each of those when we have a set of numbers. So the mean is also known as the average, and it's what you get when you add up all the numbers in your data set and then divide. So what we would have to do is we would have to figure out 10 plus 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 11 plus 2. And when I add up all those numbers, all of these numbers add up to 36. And then to find the mean, or the average, we're going to divide by the total amount of numbers. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to take that sum, that total, and divide it by 6. And when I do that, I figure out that the mean is 6. So the average in this problem is 6. Alright, and then the median is what we get when we take all of the numbers and we put them in size order from least to greatest and find the exact center. So I see that we have a 2, a 3, I shouldn't cross them out, that might confuse people, but we have a 2, the next biggest one is a 3, then we have 2 5s, then we have a 10, and finally we have an 11. And now to find the median, we have to figure out what number is exactly in the middle. So I kind of get rid of the numbers at the end, I move in one more, and then in the middle I have 2 5s. If they were different numbers, we would need to go in the middle and find out exactly what's between those two numbers, but 5 is exactly between 5 and 5 because it's the exact same number. So in this case, the median is just 5. Alright, and then the mode is whatever number shows up the most. It's kind of easy to remember. Mode is most. So if I look here, the only number that repeats is 5. So that would mean that the mode, just like the median, is 5. And then finally, the range is the difference between the largest number, the max, subtracted by the smallest number, or the minimum, in the data set. So in this case, the largest number that we have is 11, and the smallest number that we have is a 2. So if I take the maximum and subtract the minimum, in this case, I figure out that the data have a range of 9, meaning the distance between the smallest number and the biggest number is exactly 9. So hopefully that was a helpful refresher if you didn't remember those 4 terms, and you should be able to get number 2 on your own. Alright, so on the back we have the same type of problem that we had last week, and I'm redoing it because when I had you guys do a homework just on your own, there were enough students that were still confused that made me think we should go over this for another week. So these problems involve finding unit rates, like the rate per 1, when there are fractions involved. So this problem says a car travels 36 miles using 2 1/4 gallons of gasoline. At this rate, how many miles can the car travel per gallon of gasoline? So by far, the biggest mistake came when people tried to set up the ratio table but did it incorrectly. So I see that we have miles and we have gallons. Now, how do we put this information in the ratio table? Well, it's telling us that 36 miles uses 2 1/4 gallons. It's basically telling us that these two numbers go together. They're part of a ratio. 36 miles and 2 1/4 gallons are connected because that's how many miles you go in that amount of gallons. So sometimes people would put the 36 here, and maybe they'd put the 2 1/4 over here or something. So that was one mistake that I saw. The other mistake that I saw is you guys realized that you were looking for one of something, but maybe you did this. And this is incorrect because we're not looking for the amount of gallons per 1 mile. We're looking for the amount of miles per 1 gallon. So instead of that, we're looking for the amount of miles that the car can travel just on 1 gallon. So hopefully the setup makes sense. Once you get here, there are a lot of different ways to show it. And if you're fine, I feel like you could probably just do the problems. But if you want to see a couple strategies, pay attention. So the most common one that I see is just to get to the number of gallons by dividing 2 1/4 by itself. Because anything divided by itself is going to equal 1. On the top, we're going to also divide by 2 1/4. And then that's going to give us the number of miles per gallon. So over here we have 36 divided by 2 1/4. Before we can multiply by the inverse, we have to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. So 2 1/4, there's a couple of ways to think about it. If I were to draw a bunch of pictures that were divided up into fourths, so the two wholes would make up exactly, here's 4/4, and then here's 8/4, and then we have one extra fourth, so that's the same as 9/4. So I'm going to rewrite this problem as 36 divided by 9/4. And then I can multiply by the inverse of 9/4, which is 4/9. And from here, 36 times 4/9, that's basically just going to be 36 times 4, and the denominator is not going to change. You could also write it like this to see, oh, the bottom is just going to be 1 times 9, which is 9. 36 times 4 is going to give you 144, and from there, you could do some long division. 9 goes into 14 once, and then 9 goes into 54 6 times. So in the end, the answer here is exactly 16 miles. And then once I find my answer, I can stop to think, does it make sense? So the problem said the car goes 36 miles in 2 1/4 gallons. So 1 gallon I would expect to be less than 36, and probably about half of it, because 1 is like half of 2. And 16 is a little bit less than half of 36. So I'm happy with that answer. It's 16 miles per gallon. So could we have done it another way? Yes, we definitely could have. What we could have done is scaled this up to try and get rid of that fraction. And one way to do that would be to multiply this by 4. 36 times 4 would be 144. And then 2 1/4 times 4. Well, 2 times 4 is 8. 4 times 1/4, well, that's going to equal just a whole, so this equals 9. And then once you get to this step, we can scale back down to get to 1 gallon. And just like in the other problem, where we had to do 144 divided by 9, so I already know that that's going to be 16. So that's another way that you could have gotten this. If you're still lost, here's one final way that you could think about it. Imagine using a double number line where on the bottom we have gallons and on the top we have miles. And the problem tells us that 36 miles, so right here, that's 2 1/4 gallons. And we're trying to figure out, I think it would be somewhere over here, we're trying to figure out how many miles it is per 1 gallon. One way to do this would be, I'll just show it and see if it makes sense to people. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, a whole, 1 1/4, 1 2/4, 1 3/4, and 2 wholes, and then after that we'd have 2 1/4. So on the top, it's sort of like, this is sort of like a percent bar. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 equal sized parts. So I'm just going to take 36, divide it by 9, and that would equal 4. And then if we were to scale up by 4s, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, that would get me exactly to 36. And now it's kind of clear to see if 2 1/4 gallons goes exactly 36 miles, then the unit rate would be right here. 1 gallon, the car can go 16 miles. So if you watched this far, I just wanted to show you a more visual strategy, just in case you were still kind of confused. The rest is up to you, and I hope this was helpful, guys. See you later.